Well, bigorexia is on the rise in kids and teens. Now, may be wondering, what the heck is bigorexia? Well, to talk about that right now, on the KOGO News Liveline, we have Dr. Matt Chalmers. Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
Good. So first explain what bigorexia means.
So bigorexia is kind of the opposite of anorexia as far as size-wise. The big problem with that is that anorexia is more of a mental state, and it's a mental health issue. And bigorexia is being blamed for a lot of kids just trying to get really dedicated to growing themselves. So it's a little bit different, but it is people who are obsessed with getting bigger.
So, like, for example, my youngest son, super skinny. He was always worried because all the other boys, were tougher and bigger than he was. So that's the kind of kid we're talking about.
Those type of kids definitely blend into this stereotype. People who are always wanting to, like I said, increase their muscle mass, increase their size, but have a very, very hard drive for it.
So what are these kids doing? Are they just working out, or are they taking any kind of supplements? I mean, is that where we could see some problems?
A lot of these kids are, a lot of this I would tell people isn't really a problem, because what ends up happening is that these kids get really, really dedicated to their diets, lower glycemic function, higher protein. They get really, really tight on pulling the processed foods out, exercising, getting their sleep in so the muscle of their body will grow. None of these problems none of these things are problems necessarily, as long as they can keep them kind of in check and not get really, really, really hyper focused on them. As far as the hormone thing, a lot of these kids, if they'll do the hormones properly and safely, that's also not a big problem. Once these kids get the size they want, a lot of times they feel a lot better about it, and so it calms down.
Gotcha. But there's probably a mental health aspect to this too, especially if they get obsessed.
That's the big issue, is the obsession. As someone who has spent 40-something years of my life not being happy with my body, and then finally getting to a point where I am now very happy with my body, I can tell you a lot of these kids, we see it as a mental issue or mental disorder, but it's just these kids have not gotten to where they want to go. And I keep calling them kids because this is how I felt when I was this old. And now that I'm where I am now, I feel very, very confident and very happy with my body. So some of the stuff is they're just not where they want to be yet.
Right. And, back in the day, it was just the kids in your school that you might want to live up to. Now we have social media. We have to see the entire universe and how great they look. So I'm imagining that comes into play.
That plays a giant role, and that's where things start to get really, really bad. And the problem with that is that a lot of these kids are seeing images of people who have a completely different body style and body type and different genetics. And so it's very difficult to live up to a standard that is not set for yourself. So when we start treating this, we start working with kids on this, the most important thing that we do is we figure out, this is who you are. This is how your body was built. You're an endomorph. You're an ectomorph. You're a mesomorph. Here's what your ultimate goal can be for what you have. Once you kind of do that with these guys, they really start to focus in on where they can go, and that mental issue starts kind of shifting a little bit. And so it is very treatable, but the problem is that you have to get with somebody who understands metabolic biochemistry and somatotypes, and that's pretty rare.
So what do you do if you have, a young person in your life that you're worried that, may be falling victim to this?
I would get them with an athlete, a trainer who understands the difference between, being very committed and dedicated and with having mental problems with it. So a lot of really great high-end trainers and a lot of health coaches can see this. And we have I personally have a lot of therapists that I work with for both sides, for the anorexia and for the bigorexia issues. And so we hand those guys off whenever we see it. However, it's a lot more rare that it's damaging and problematic in the bigorexia than it is in the anorexia. Almost all of those need therapy.
Right, right. And I was going to say, you probably learned a lot, because it used to be girls mostly that had, the eating disorders, but you probably learned a lot treating them now with this new phenomena called bigorexia.
Yeah, the nice thing is that we're actually getting, it's funny because some of the girls are being classified as this as well. And I would be very careful with just throwing this diagnosis around, because it's not as damaging to see. If you see somebody you can see her ribs or his ribs and they look very gaunt, that's very easy to be like, that's most likely anorexia. But when you look at somebody who's getting very dedicated to their diet and exercise and things like that, that's not necessarily a mental health issue they need to worry about. It could just be something they're getting substantially healthier. We're going to see people getting healthier. So I want to make sure that we're not mistaking people who are just trying to get healthy for having a mental issue.
Right. All right, Dr. Matt Chalmers, author of Pillars of Wellness, Achieve and Uphold Holistic Health, Vitality, and Longevity. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.